All right. Nice to meet you, Oksana. Can you start by telling me a little bit about yourself and what you do and how you came to be where you are today?
Yes, so first of all, thank you for inviting me here. It's a pleasure for me to speak about psychology and emotional intelligence. This is something that I can talk for hours. So let me introduce myself. My name is Oksana Yusupova. I'm a registered psychotherapist in Canada.
Uh,
Uh, I have a master's degree in psychology, and I work with families, children, teenagers, and adults in emotional focused therapy. And I'm all about emotions. I lead workshops for children, for adults about emotions. I am writing right now a book about emotions. I have a lot of classes, courses online and in person for children, for teenagers about emotion and developing emotional intelligence. So this is something that I'm passionate about. It's
wow.
a way to talk about it.
Nice, nice. So the goal of our conversation today is really to get to an understanding of what emotional intelligence is, especially for children, and get to understanding how emotional intelligence, developing emotional intelligence in children, will help us in raising future leaders, children that, that build a legacy that a civilization will be proud of. So I think that the first place we'll start would be, defining what emotional intelligence is. What does emotional intelligence mean?
Mhm. Yes, and it's good to understand. Sometimes I ask people, "What do you understand?" When I talk about emotional intelligence, and what I see, people see it differently than I see.
Mm.
If you don't mind, can I ask you, what do you understand about emotional intelligence?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think that I mix up, or I think there's a big overlap between emotional intelligence and social intelligence. And I think emotional intelligence is the ability to navigate our own emotions, especially in relationship with our social environment, without being overwhelmed by it. I think that a lot of times there are two categories, two extremes that people tend to fall in, and they're either emotionally distant and unavailable, and they're not aware of a lot of feelings that might be going on. They either bottle it up, or they're not just aware of having these feelings, and it feels alien to them to have feelings. And another set of extreme are people who feel their emotions so intensely that it overpowers them, and they're not able to function, not able to navigate through life. So, and emotions often tend to occur in a social environment, relationship to other people, relationship to our aspirations, our dreams, and failure and winning. So, being able to navigate these things and maintain balance. And by balance, I don't mean always being in the middle, but uh, appropriately shifting, based on the situation. So there's a place to mourn, a place to grieve, and you grieve when you need to grieve, but you don't grieve too much. You know, there's a place for joy and place for happiness, and you show happiness, and you're able to deal with happiness without, going overboard and losing control, or making bad decisions because you're overjoyed. So that's emotional intelligence for me.
I really love your explanation. What I very often hear from parents when I ask them about emotional intelligence, I hear this type of answers. I want my child to be positive. I want my child to know how to control anger emotion. So it's more about control and more about stay positive.
Mm,
But it's not what I see, and this is not what is important. What it doesn't mean that we need to all be positive. It's not what emotions, what do we need with our emotions. And I love your explanation. I totally agree with it. So we need all of them, all different kinds of emotions.
mm,
Sadness is a beautiful emotion, and anger, it hides power, huge power. So we cannot ignore it and freeze it forever. So we need it. We just need to know more information about it. And from my understanding, developing emotional intelligence in children, first of all, we as adults, we need to understand what is it, what is the meaning of it. We don't need to teach our children to control their emotions. We need to understand how emotions appears in our body, how our brain is connecting with emotions, how our body is connected, and what is the real meaning of each emotion. I see emotions like little helpers in our body, and all type of this emotions sending some signals for us. It's like helpers who are sending messages. Look, here in this situation, I felt uncomfortable. In this situation, I felt very good. So always some messages. And what do we need to do? We need to understand, especially, and if we talk about children, it's essential to understand brain, how brain works, what we can expect from children and what we cannot, because they're too young and they don't have the special areas of brain which are helping to analyze things, for example. It's very important to understand. For example, from 5 years old, we cannot uh, we can accept, not accept, sorry, I lost what I wanted to say.
So,
So what is important, what I want to say, that in some age, it's very important to understand what my child can do and what they can, because their brain is still developing and they don't have this function.
right, right. So you've talked a lot about understanding emotion, and I think it's absolutely necessary for children to learn to understand their own emotions, parents learn to understand their own emotions. But I want you to talk a little bit more about control of emotions, because I think that a marker of adulthood, of becoming an adult, is being able to control your emotions. It's not that you mustn't necessarily express every emotion you feel. Sometimes you're angry. You understand that you're angry, but there's a place to be able to hold that anger back and step back from the situation. You can continue to feel anger without expressing it. And that's where we begin to talk about emotional control. And perhaps you can talk a little bit more about the place for control in emotional intelligence and emotional maturity.
Here I have a little bit different perspective on this. I don't think we need to control our emotions. I don't think that it is healthy for us to control, but I understand what you're talking about. We don't need to express. In what I want to say, that when I understand what is going on right now in my body, I can notice this anger, for example, from first signals, from first um, discomfort, from first tension in jaw.
Yeah.
I can feel it. If the person um, feel the body, it is possible to feel like slight signals from the body that be aware, something going on. Do not let the emotion raise and become bigger and bigger and bigger when it's a rage level, out of control, and it cannot say anything. So
So, yeah.
my theory is
Yeah.
about understanding emotion, developing connection with our body,
Yeah.
and hear our body and these signals from very, very, very beginning.
Mm. It sounds the way that you talk about emotion. It's almost like it has a will of its own, separate from our own will. And there are two ways people think about emotion in relation to us. You know, some people think that, uh, emotions, we encounter a situation, we have emotions about the situation, and then we begin to think about emotion. So emotion is almost like a gut instinct or instinctive reaction to something. So let's say I was walking in the bush, I saw a lion. Suddenly I become afraid, and then I see my body reacting in certain ways. You talked about jaw tightening. I feel myself shivering and shaking. And I notice these things about myself. And then I interpret my reaction and say, oh, look at how my body is feeling. I must be afraid. And so we understand our emotions. Our emotions come first before our thoughts. There are other people who think that, our thoughts come first before our emotions. So I go into this forest, I see a lion, I think, oh, the lion is going to eat me. And because I think that, I become afraid and I begin to have these bodily reactions. But the truth will be that there's a little bit of both, you know. The consequence of thinking that, our thoughts affect our emotion, the implication of that is that by changing our thoughts, we can change our emotions. So that brings us back to control. Do you think that there's this, feedback between thoughts and emotion or any other system and emotion that by modifying one, we can modify the other? And the reason I asked this is because as human beings, we have the ability to appreciate when our emotions are the word I want to use is inappropriate. There are such things as inappropriate emotions, I have a friend. My friend is succeeding. I have a feeling of jealousy and envy. You know, my friend has done me no harm. There's nothing wrong. But naturally, in human relationships, we end up sometimes feeling inappropriate emotions. And so are we slaves to these emotions, or is there any way that we have power over them?
It's very interesting to talk with you. I really love your perspective in how you see it and the theories that you shared with me. Uh, I see all emotions like our little helpers, all, everyone, everything. For example, envy. Why it's an appropriate emotion? I understand why it's in society. But from psychological perspective, envy means I really want this. I want this success in my life. And this is the point. This is where we need to put our attention and talk to ourselves. So I want to be successful. So maybe my body, my brain show me these signals that, you want this too. Because we are not jealous to everything, right? Some people see Tesla and they feel very angry about it. Some people, it doesn't matter for them. For some people, jealousy, it's a signal and it sends message to us. Look, you want this. And what do we need to do? Just hear our body, like speak to our body. So you think I want to be successful, you want I to be rich, you want me to be rich, you want me to be in happy relationship. Okay, I will think about it. Then the person can accept it, for example, and then can change their attitude towards it. And of course, our thoughts and emotions are connected. In our brain, we have amygdala, and amygdala reacts when we face some situation.
Mm,
But there were a lot of scientific experiments that prove that real situation impact us to feel some emotions. And the
mm,
same if we imagine the situation. If I imagine that something's going on and I can feel the same fear as I see a lion in real life.
mm. All right. I'll ask you one more question on this before I move on. There's still talking about inappropriate emotions. There's this German word, I don't know how to say it, is Schadenfreude. Is the joy we feel, we experience pleasure when another person suffers. And this would be an example of an inappropriate emotion. Much of comedy, for instance, much of things that we laugh at are often the suffering of others. If you look at, what counts, what people laugh at on the internet, the suffering of others. And beyond that, that's not necessarily Schadenfreude, but someone is being humiliated, someone is suffering, and we feel joy at it. Joy is a mismatch to the reality we experience in the world. And that's what I'll call an inappropriate emotion. So now you say that emotions are little helpers always. So how would you explain, how would that feeling be helpful in that moment for that person?
I will give you an example from my real work with family, and I see the situation more often than I want to see when I lead a family session, and sometimes conflict escalates, and the child or one of the partners, if it's family couple session, can say, "I hate you," towards other, for example, child towards parent, or one partner towards other, and express it with all words and emotion. Of course, it's an appropriate emotion right now. But when we see deeper, we can see that this person who says hate words really experiencing a huge pain inside. And they are saying these words not because they really think about it, but because they're suffering from this pain. And when I notice it and bring it to our session, that, when people say these words, they usually feel a huge pain at this moment. And the person just redirects their attention from outside to inside and see themselves, like, really, I feel pain. And now we can see what is really going on.
Yeah.
So if we dive deeper,
Yeah.
we can see that what is the reason. So
Yeah.
emotions appear in our body to send some messages to us. But if we don't hear them, they become louder and louder and louder. And when it's very louder, like fire alarm,
Yeah.
it's we cannot miss it. We cannot ignore it. We all hear it. And this is what's happened with us. It's like a huge level.
Yeah.
But and on this level, it's like red zone. On this level, it's very hard to manage our behavior.
Yeah.
And of course, in this situation, we need to stop, we need to control. But if we are developing emotional intelligence, we can notice this from very, very, very beginning.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
will be easier for us to
Yeah.
manage life, to manage relationships.
Yeah, I definitely understand what you're saying, that in many instances, in very, very many instances, emotions are signals of deep-seated problems that need to be fixed. I think we will just continue to disagree a little bit on the fact that there are no emotions that can be inappropriate because, like I pointed out, sometimes people we don't know, we have emotions towards them, we have joy when they suffer. You know, we emotions that are inappropriate, and perhaps when we tease this out, we might find that okay, that maybe it's deep-seated, but I'm not sure that that will be true in all the cases. The next question I'll have for you uh is, you know can you talk a little bit more about your experience outside Canada, comparing that to your experience within Canada? Because I've spoken to a lot of healthcare professionals, and they tell me, and I think it's been my experience too, that one of the big differences between practicing with children outside Canada, in Africa, where I come from, or in Canada is that there's a heavy mental health burden. In the countries where they came from, they didn't encounter many children who were contemplating suicide. They didn't encounter many children who were depressed and unable to function and needing, to be on medications to maintain their emotions. And so immigrating to Canada as healthcare professionals, suddenly they see a sea change in their practice where the majority of their practice with children often centers around mental health and encountering children who are overwhelmed by their emotions. And perhaps
Mhm.
my experience where I come from, I talked initially about this difference between emotional unavailability, a lack of emotional awareness. I think that's more prevalent where a lot of people are not emotionally available and they're not, they don't know what depression is. And if you ask them, they deny and they've not really thought deeply about it. And here I find a lot of people are very emotionally aware, but overwhelmed by these emotions and overwhelmed to the point where it impairs their function that they need support in order to continue to survive. So I want to know if this has been your experience too. Has there been any big difference in the experience of children in Canada and children where you come?
Mhm. Yes, a very interesting question. I start to reflect and really compare what's going on. I'm from Ukraine. I have master's degree in psychology, what I get in Ukraine. And I can see it's a very high quality of this degree, and I use this information. What I get 20 years ago from my university, I still use it in my practice. So I understand how essential it was and that it was very helpful. Um, I work as a child psychologist in Ukraine. I work with children. When I came to Canada, it was not uh, very long time ago. It was 5 years ago. And what I see here, yes, I see that kids, teenagers, adults, they came to me and they already have diagnosis for them. It's very common to hear words stress or depression from 5 years old, from 6 years old. So I see it is like result from this mental health developing information that school try to send to children. However, I see like side effects, and the side effects, this is overdiagnosis, labeling, and what I see, teenagers especially, they it's normal for teenager to find some support, inner support for themselves to understand how to build their own independent life without when they separating from parents and when they're trying to build their own mindset. And they usually use some theories, some information from outside to use it like support for themselves. And sometimes they want to find several diagnoses for them, and they really want to have psychotherapists. I hear it for very long time ago. It starts, and still when it is a child who wants parents to arrange the appointment with psychotherapists. So they, for example, can discuss with peers. My friend has psychotherapist and I want to. So, and all information from school, yes, I see difference. I see, but I don't know, is it different just in Canada or it's like world change? How many information right now we can find free in internet about uh, psychology?
Hmm. My impression is
Mm.
that around the world, people are getting moving towards a direction away from emotional resilience around the world, but it's worse in Western countries that are at what we categorize as first world countries. It's worse here, and it's changing everywhere, but it's very much worse here. And for me, the question becomes, what is the reason for this? Do you think that the focus on mental health in general and having conversations about mental health is what we hear everywhere? Is this uh, maybe obsession? You can use that word. Is this obsession uh, taking away emotional resilience in children? I wonder what you think.
Maybe it can be. Honestly, it's hard for me right now to say because I didn't see a lot of cases about it. I
Mm,
see this like science of it.
mm,
I see some situations, but I don't see it very often to have theory on it.
mm,
So, like how I said about teenagers,
mm,
children wants want to find some theories or some information that they can use in real life to based on it to be an adult.
mm,
They need some information. For example, wash your hands before eating, or how you need to cross the road. It's like simple rules, but they collect it and finding support from it when they try to be independent adults.
right, right, right.
So,
So,
and they're maybe looking for some this type of support to in mental health too. I have a daughter, she's teenager, and she usually shared with me what information she saw from TikTok, for example, and it was surprise for me, but it is a lot of information about mental health.
mm,
I don't want to discuss right now quality on it, but still it's like a hot topic.
mm, right. So, from what I'm understanding, you're saying is that children are needing a framework, a structure for which they would experience the world around them. And they get this structure from their social environment, including the internet. And therefore, what would you say the parent's role is for building this structure for them? What's the parent's role in doing that?
Uh, as I, as a therapist, are all about emotions. So my answer here is to parents' role is to save this connection with the inner self, with the emotion for the child. Because we were all born with high developing emotional intelligence. Kids feel adults, you know it. Sometimes the kid can cry with this adult, but can go to another adult. Children feel it. The children feel themselves too. However, while they are growing and from society, from parents, from system, from school, from daycare, from everywhere, everyone, all system is impacting how they grow. And what I see often that sometimes in age 8, 9, 10, kids can close this connection with their emotions and with their body. And they start thinking, analyze the world, and live only on cognitive level. And it's not healthy because our emotions not always something that not always distraction for us. Very often our emotions show us what our talents are, what I love, what I want, what is my passion. It's very important to be connected with our body. If we live only on cognitive level, only on mind level, it's very easy for people to be involved in manipulation because we can explain logically almost everything. People who are victims of scam schemes, there are people who are not feeling themselves, who just thinking, and they heard the logical story and they agree to it. But their intuition sends them signals, but they didn't hear, didn't notice, ignore it. So my point for parents that at the same time, when we are raising our kids, be careful and try to save this connection with ourselves, with help the children to save connection with themselves, with their emotions. Explain, because very often children think that if I feel angry, it means that I'm a bad person. My parents want me to behave in a good way, but they cannot do anything with me, so I'm a bad person. But it's not true. It's very important to understand that anger doesn't mean that you're a bad person. Anger tries to send you messages, and anger has a huge power. When I work with adults and they can accept the anger, after that, they can feel a huge flow of energy.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So the next question I have for you is whether you differentiate between emotional resilience and emotional intelligence. Emotional
Mhm.
resilience and emotional intelligence. Do you differentiate between those two things?
Uh, Good question. I need to think about it. So for me, I believe it's the same.
Mm,
When we are raising our emotional intelligence, when I am aware of my emotion,
mm,
I will be, as a result, I will be resilient.
mm,
I can cope with stress. I can accept help. I can manage my emotions. I can see, I can notice them from very beginning.
mm,
And as a result, I can be resilient. So
mm,
this life challenges not stopping me from going forward. Of
mm,
course, sometimes it can be hard, sometimes it can be challenging, but it's like a new experience. It's like a computer game. You're
mm,
finishing this level in some very important battle. You will get the skills and you will go to another level and
mm,
you will be more resilient and then more and more and more. This is
mm.
what we need to do during life.
Right. So one consequence of my view that there's such a thing as inappropriate emotions is that it means that I have an uh, uh, idealistic ideas of what appropriate behavior and emotions in certain situations are. And then the consequence or the role of the parent in that situation is to outline what the ideal is, to show the vision of what the perfect and that ideal that we ought to aspire to is, and also be accepting of the failings and the imperfections of the child as we see them today. The parent's job is to paint that picture so that they can have a North Star, something that they can look to and work towards, but still understand that that is a picture that they might never get to. It's just guidance for them to work towards. I wonder if you've talked about getting better. What does better mean in a world where all emotions are equally appropriate?
This is what I just said. When you finish one level in one game,
Mm,
you will get the skills. Now you can understand. For example, what I see when I work with children, with teenagers, with adults, I always ask, where do you feel it in your body? And when I ask this question 10, 20, 100 times, the person can feel it better, 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 better.
So better
So
is greater ability to identify the emotions
identify,
you feel.
yeah, identify on physical and emotional level.
Mm,
It's very important to not ignore physical level too.
mm,
So getting better in developing emotional intelligence means feeling better your body,
mm,
hear your intuition. I heard so many stories and I experienced this type of situation in my life too. For example, when I plan something, but then I had this light feeling that no, I don't want it. I didn't uh, pay attention to it. I didn't analyze. I didn't discuss why I didn't. I changed my decision. But then, in one day, in 1 hour, the situation changed, and I realized that it was good that I changed my plan, and I didn't went, for example, for this event.
mm,
It's like developing your connection with your body, and you can hear yourself, you can hear your intuition, you
mm,
can feel the slight impulses in your body. And when you understand theoretically what emotions are, when you understand how your brain works, when you understand how your nervous system works, how it appears in your body, and when you can understand levels, all emotions has levels. It starts from low, and then if we ignore it, become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
mm,
So we can notice changes from very beginning, and we can navigate it. And then the person can be more resilient, can face challenges in a more healthy way.
mm. So I think it's intuitive for everyone if you bring up the conversation about what parents should do for their children uh, to help them develop emotionally. It's intuitive for everyone to say something along the lines of parents should be more open, should be more giving, should be more in touch, and be more able to have conversations about feelings and things like that. My question to you though is there a role for parents to withhold and to say no to children as a means to build them up emotionally,
Of
to to
course.
to create distance and say you did with it yourself, even though it's difficult, even though you may be stressed, you may be crying. Is there a place for parents to censor and say this information, this whatever it is, you can't have access to that? Is there any place for tough love in
Yeah.
your worldview?
Yes, I totally agree with you that parents, it's like roof of the house, roof of the building. They
Mm,
are protecting, but the child cannot be a parent from very beginning. Children need support. Their brain is not developing totally full. Their body, it's like if we compare trees, young tree and a big tree, where we can build, for example, tree house, not on the little one, right? Only on the big house, which is strong enough to hold it. The same with the children. So it's very important for parents to be uh, supportive, to take care, to explain. But sometimes it is also essential to have like boundaries and said that I'm an adult, I'm here to support you, and I understand that it's hard for you, but you need to do, for example, this homework by yourself. I'm here, but I will not do it for you. You need to take a pencil and write this word.
mm,
Of course, it's very important to be this strong adult, and it will help children understand that I'm safe. It's
mm,
essential to feel safe.
mm. So, what in your experience are the biggest mistakes that parents make when trying to do this? What are the pitfalls and the myths that they believe that cause them to harm their children inadvertently?
It's hard to say because all situations are unique, and I don't have like families that I work for 20 years that I can see, oh, okay, it was their mistake and it led to these consequences. However, I see struggles, and I see when parents um, ask to stop therapy, and or if the therapy is not resultable as can be.
Mm,
I see the situation when parents are not open, when they see themselves as a perfect, and they don't want to make any change.
mm,
They want only their child to change, or therapists work with their children to make them to change children so they can fit better into their family. But it's not ethical. This is not the best way.
mm. Okay. Um, just to shift gears a little bit and touch on another topic, that's gender differences. If you ask the average person, you walk out on the street, ask the average person, do you think there are gender differences in the temperament, in the awareness, and the emotional intelligence of children, whether male, female children? Do you find anybody, average person who has had children before, would often tell you, yes, boys do this way, girls do this way. But if you ask the experts, people who have PhDs, if there are any gender differences, they tell you, oh, it's all social. There are no ingrained, natural, instinctive, biological differences among children of different genders. So I wanted to know what you thought. Do you think that gender differences, are these gender differences real?
I don't feel it really in my practice. However, I see cultural differences, not differences, cultural, like results from different cultural backgrounds. For
Mm,
example, in some countries, uh, adults who are now adults, but when they were children, uh, it was um, it was different parenting style. Nobody paid attention to emotions and what child feels. What does it mean? You don't want to eat it, just eat. So I see sometimes I see this type of cultural impact.
yeah,
However, I don't see mm, differences. And my clients mostly are women.
mm,
Uh,
yeah,
it's maybe, yes, I work with adults, couples, and families. And very often, when I work with family and father just can visit one session
mm,
and then didn't show for um, therapy. So it's hard for me. I don't think I have
yeah.
enough data to
Mm.
analyze it.
So why do you
But
think this difference between people who are educated on the subject, such as yourself, and the average person exists? Because, like I mentioned, if you go on the street and you ask any mother or any random person who hasn't doesn't have a master's degree in psychology or a PhD in neuroscience, they'll tell you, "Oh, my boys and my girls are distinctly different, and in my interaction with boys and girls in the world, I notice observable distinctive patterns." But why do you think that the average person sees these things as differences, but people who are experts in the field don't seem to appreciate them?
I understand that they can see it,
Mm,
but honestly, in my practice, I don't see this like very vivid
mm,
differences.
mm. Okay. Okay.
Because I think so. First of all, why you asked why they see it. First of all, like social media, what we can see from film, movies, from what they hear from friends, and what sometimes parents ask me, tell me, is my child behaves well for this age, because I have only one child and I don't know with whom do I need compare. And I see a lot of kids every day, a lot of adults, a lot of people every day, and I see like um bigger group, and I can see these differences. So I don't know what to say. So I
Mm,
believe social media
mm,
and impact
mm.
stigma.
Right. Yeah. So you did talk about cultural differences, that you appreciate certain cultural differences across people. And I think that's an interesting point about the social dimensions of emotional expression. And for many people, emotion is reality. One word that a lot of people use today is trauma. Oh, I experienced trauma. I've worked in prison before. And working in prison, you'll see a lot of people who tell you about your childhood trauma, right? And coming from where I come from, much of what they have experienced, people where I come from would not call that trauma.
Mhm,
So there is a social dimension by which we experience things we label, whether as trauma, as abuse, as words we use to describe things. The person where I come from will experience these things, will not see himself as suffering particularly. And I think the reason for that is because everybody else around him experiences the same thing. And a person who comes from a place where a place of abundance and where access to things are plentiful, sees himself being deprived of certain things and other people around him having those things and thinks of it as trauma. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about this social dimension. There've been studies, for instance, that show that people who have nice houses, but their house is not the nicest house on the street, are less happy than people who don't have so nice houses, but they live in communities where their houses are the average or better than the average. So, can you talk a little bit about this social dimension of of trauma, of emotional deprivation, and of the ways in which we think about our childhood and the way children think about themselves in their relationship to the world?
mhm. Yes, and when I studied trauma approach, I remember how our professor said that not every child who is experienced trauma will
Mm,
be traumatized.
mm,
Not every child who faces difficulties will be traumatized,
mm,
because this traumatic situation goes on their mental health, on their abilities, on the situation, if they were supported or not, what was the situation. It's like so many factors impact on the child. And when I work with children again, I see that sometimes this child experiencing terrible situation. However, I don't see, I see them more resilient
mm.
than others.
Okay. So,
I see like it's mindset, maybe mindset of this social environment where they live.
mm,
Again, if they're a supportive adult, they can arrange huge support for children who face terrible trauma, and
mm,
they will help them, and the child will go later in life more healthier.
Mm. All right. Before we wrap up, I just have two more questions. What are your views on spanking and corporal punishment? What do you think about, you know, uh, punishment in general and spanking in specific?
Mhm. So what does it mean, punishment?
Mm,
Why parents use it? Again, I'm going back to emotions.
mm,
If the parent cannot um, cannot uh, be visible for by children, they start raise their voice.
mm,
If the parent is not what to say, I'm thinking what's the correct word here. Maybe not very confident in
mm,
their parenting. And if they don't feel themselves like authority or strong adult, so they will use yelling, screaming, and they can, if this doesn't work, they try to use power, so they can use, then they use punishment.
mm,
Uh, of course, I don't see it's a healthy way. And what I see here, that it's very important for parents to understand it, to notice that I'm yelling right now because I don't feel power, and my children emotionally stronger than myself.
mm,
And in this case, I need to take back my power. And then parents use this time. So if I work with parents on this parenting approaches and yelling, for example, we work on how they see themselves in parenting. And we are building this support, working with negative beliefs, why they see themselves such a weak in
mm.
this role. And
Okay.
then when we change their attitude and they change their feeling in this role, when they accept that, yes, I'm an adult, I'm a strong adult and have a right, I have a right to be a parent for my children. So they will not use punishment and even screaming and yelling.
Mhm. Okay. So, what would be your top 5 tips to parents if you wanted to give them a guide to raising emotionally intelligent children? What would be your top 5 things you tell them?
Mhm. First, read more about emotional intelligence. Read more about emotion. Read different articles, read different books. Try to understand the nature of emotions. It's wider than just control an emotion and stay positive. Then second recommendation is hearing yourself. For parents, before you go to help your children, when then you try to help them develop an emotional intelligence, try to feel yourself, feel your body, feel your emotions. What do you feel right now? What happened 1 second before you use this punishment? What happened before you raised your voice? What happened 1 second before something triggered you? What emotion did you feel in this situation with your children? Third, it will be try to look deeper. If you see your child is angry right now towards you, try to separate it like masks, different masks, and look deeper. What is really bothering your child? Maybe they feel alone. Maybe they feel scared. Maybe they have anxious thoughts. Maybe they experience some traumas right now. So try to separate first things that you see and see deeper. And then, fourth, it will be helping your children to raise their emotions. Talk with your children about emotions. Watch some videos or see, I recommend to see it before by yourself. Some video, a lot of good videos you can find on YouTube. You can read books. Maybe my book will be useful. So I will be happy to share it with you too. So try to speak with your children about emotions. Ask them, I see you are very angry right now. Share your emotions. Like, use this emotional vocabulary right now. Because children, they don't have a huge vocabulary. They can say, I hate you, even if they feel rejected, or even they feel alone, or even they feel bored. They don't have a huge vocabulary. And the fifth will be playing emotional games, using emotional cards or different games with your children. For example, play games when you use cards and you need to show your expression and then say to other player, I see you are very anxious right now, for example, or I see you are happy. This type of game, again, will help their brain to be used to use these words in real life, to help them understand that it's okay to talk about emotions. It's okay to see, and you will help them make their emotional vocabulary bigger.
Thank you so much, Oksana. It's been wonderful talking to you and sharing your wisdom with the audience. I'm sure a lot of people will learn a lot from this conversation, and I'm always happy to talk to you more and talk to you again. It's been really, really a pleasure.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure for me too. I love your question. You helped me to see wider, to think, to reflect. I prepared some plan for today. However, you helped it, you made your questions, made this conversation deeper and with more essential details. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure for me to speak with you.
Wonderful, wonderful. We'll be looking forward to your book coming out, and then I'll be sure to share it in my platform.
Yes, thank you. Sounds very excited. Okay.